What does Scripture have to say about the resurrection, and when does it take place? Let's look in Scripture at 1 Thessalonians chapter 3, starting verse 15. For this we say to you by the word of the Lord, that we who are alive and remain until the coming of the Lord will by no means precede those who are asleep, which translated, of course, means dead. For the Lord himself will ascend from heaven with a shout, with the voice of the archangel, and with the trumpet of God, and the dead in Christ will rise first. Then we who are alive and remain shall be called up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air, and thus we shall always be with the Lord. Therefore comfort one another with these words. The next part is what people seem to have a big misunderstanding about. The title here is the Day of the Lord. What is the Day of the Lord? Let's read. But concerning the times and the seasons, brethren, you have no need that I should write to you, for you yourselves know perfectly that the day of the Lord so comes as a thief in the night. For when they say peace and safety, then sudden destruction comes upon them as labor pains upon pregnant woman, and they shall not escape. Now notice in this verse that it says when they say. That's not talking about the saved, it's talking about the people of the world. Look at verse 4. But you, brethren, are not in darkness, so that this day should overtake you as a thief. Again, here it's addressing this day. You are all sons of the light and sons of the day. We are not of night nor of darkness. Therefore let us not sleep as do others, but let us watch and be sober. Now, where did Paul get this information here? That, in verse 3 says, for when they say peace and safety, then sudden destruction comes upon them. Well, he got it out of the book of Isaiah. So let's take a look. Isaiah chapter 13. The noise of a multitude in the mountains, like that of many people, a tumultuous noise, that of kingdoms of nations gathered together. The Lord of hosts musters the army for battle. They come from a far country, from the end of heaven, the Lord and his weapons of indignation, to destroy the whole land. Verse 6. Well, for the day of the Lord is at hand. Here again is that day. It will come as destruction from the Almighty. Therefore all hands will be limp, every man's heart will melt, and they will be afraid. Pains and sorrows will take hold of them. They will be in pain as a woman in childbirth. They will be amazed at one another. Their faces will be like flame. Behold, the day of the Lord comes, cruel with both wrath and fierce anger, to lay the land desolate, and he will destroy its sinners from it. For the stars of heaven and their constellations will not give their light. The sun will be darkened in its going forth, and the moon will not cause its light to shine. I will punish the world for its evil, and the wicked for their iniquity. I will halt the arrogance of the proud, and lay low the haughtiness of the terrible. Okay, we see here, again, this day, this is where Paul was referring from there in the book of Thessalonians, when it talked about women being in labor and people being like that. Because when a woman goes into labor, there's no stopping it. It's started and it's going to be finished. That's what it's going to be like on this day of the Lord. Let's look at another place in Scripture where it talks about this. This comes out of the book of Revelation. Okay, let's see here. I looked, and when he had opened the sixth seal, and behold, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as a sackcloth of hair, and the moon became like blood, and the stars of heaven fell to the earth, as a fig tree drops its late figs when it is shaken by a mighty wind. Then the sky receded as a scroll when it is rolled up, and every mountain and island was moved out of its place. Verse 15, and the kings of the earth, the great men, the rich men, the commanders, the mighty men, every slave, every free man, hid themselves in the caves and in the rocks of the mountains, and said to the mountains and rocks, fall on us, and hide us from the face of him who sits on the throne, and from the wrath of the Lamb. For the great day of his wrath has come, and who is able to stand? Well, let's look at another scripture that talks about this day of wrath. This comes out of Matthew 24. The coming of the Son of Man. Now notice the very first few words here. Immediately after. I'm going to say that again. Immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light. The stars will fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens will be shaken. It just spoke about that in Revelation, also in Isaiah. It addressed the moon and the stars. Notice, though, again, immediately after the tribulation of those days. Okay, go to verse 30. Then the sign of the Son of Man will appear in heaven, and then all the tribes of the earth will mourn, and they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. And he will send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet, and they will gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. This is the gathering of the saints here, where he gathers them from the four corners of the earth. Notice there it says elect. Who is the elect according to Scripture? According to Scripture, whoever has been saved, been redeemed by the blood of the Lamb, is the elect of God. And he will send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet, and they will gather together his elect from the four winds. Same thing it said there in the book of Thessalonians where we read. Let's go back and look at it one more time. Verse 16, for the Lord himself will descend from heaven with a shout, and with the voice of an archangel, and with the trumpet of God. There's the trumpet again. And the dead in Christ will rise first. Then we who are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air, and thus we shall always be with the Lord. Here is the trumpet with a shout of the archangel. Let's go back to Matthew one more time so we can get this very clear, because there's, like I said, a lot of misunderstanding about this day. Because look again at verse 29. Immediately after the tribulation of those days. There is no pre-tribulation rapture. That's a false doctrine. If you'd like to hear more about this and see the scriptures to back it up, join this website again.